What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Jersey Joe Show, a place where we talk about a little bit of everything, mostly hockey, and I'm excited to finally have the first ever episode where I can actually talk about the New Jersey Devils and not just try to predict or talk about off-season moves or something like that. I can actually talk about the games now, and that's something I'm super excited about. So we have a lot to talk about. We're about 6 games deep so far. Devils are 5-1-0. They are doing way better than anyone predicted, including myself. Whether or not it's sustainable, I'll talk about that. I just want to go over the games, go over how this team's different from last year's, things I like, things I don't like. So it's going to be a bit of a long one, and I think that's okay because we got a lot of ground to cover. So let's start right away with the home opener against the Colorado Avalanche. Fortunately, I was actually at a wedding at the exact time that this game started, so I wasn't able to watch it. But I did see a majority of the highlights. I was able to watch as much of the condensed game as I could, and I liked what I saw. You had Will Butcher coming out with 3 assists in his first ever NHL debut. You have a couple of goal scorers. You have a 4-1 game. It's a pretty dominant game against a team that actually is doing pretty well, at least in terms of where they were last year in the Colorado Avalanche. So, again, I couldn't watch it, so I don't have too much to say about it, but from what I saw, it was a good game, a good opener, and I liked that a lot of the up-tempo attacking style we had in the preseason was able to be carried over into the actual season. I was afraid that now that we're playing against full rosters of NHL players, that style may not cut it, that our players aren't skilled enough to keep that up against, actual first liners and actual top pairings, and they did that pretty well. Again, it was the Avalanche, so I tried to temper my expectations, but then a couple days later we go into Buffalo and completely rout them at a 6-2 game. And Jesper Bratt comes out, he has 6 points in 2 games, he is blowing people away. He's this fantastic surprise that no one saw coming. And there's a reason for that, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but that game was something else. I've never seen the Devils dominate the way they dominated Buffalo. Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier had his first point in that game. It was just an unbelievable performance put on by this team that I did not expect. I really didn't expect the Devils to come out of the gate like that. The preseason, I do feel like we played a lot of our A roster against a lot of teams and their AHLers and their prospects. I felt like we may have just had better players in the lineup during the preseason, and that's why we had the success we did. Nope. This is the team. This is how well they're playing. John Hines' system has been fantastic so far. The players are really clicking. They have fantastic chemistry. Gibbons on the 4th line is a new surprise. It's a very weird feeling considering that last year we were last in the Eastern Conference, and I would actually actively avoid thinking or looking at Devil stuff because it was so depressing at one point. So this is a little weird, hoping it continues, but we'll have to see because it's a long season. We're only 6 games in, but oh boy am I excited. So going back to Jesper Bratt, or Jesper Bratt as he wants to be called. Now for some reason they all want to have the Y's changed to a J sound, Marcus Johansson instead of Johansson. I don't understand why, but for now, he'll be Jesper Bratt to me. And if you don't know, he was a 6th round pick just last year. Wasn't even expected to make training camp, let alone be in the top 6. I think he's on the 2nd line now with Henrique and Palmieri, or he might have been dropped to the 3rd for the game against Tampa Bay. There's been a lot of shuffling, but he was at one point on the 2nd line. And he came in and dominated training camp. He dominated development camp back in the summer. Came into the preseason, again, dominated. And now going into the regular season, he is 2nd in team scoring behind Butcher with 6 points. Butcher has 9. So, out of nowhere, completely dominating. He has these incredible hands, incredible speed. He's very much of a pest. I've noticed that he's a really good forechecker. He has a lot of speed. He's very quick. He's out like Hischier in that regard. He's just very speedy, and that fits into the system really well. And what had happened with him was a couple years ago, he had a bad season, and it got into his head. Every team he's been on says he has the skill. It's just all this mental lapse he's been suffering from. And I think sometime over the past year, he's been talking to an actual athletics coach for the mental aspect. I don't want to say a therapist because I don't think it's a therapist, but I think it was a mental coach strictly for athletes to get their head back in the game. And since then, every team he's been on, he has dominated. His own national team was just like, where did this guy come from? I know his junior team, I believe it was London, they want him back. And our team, obviously, we're keeping him up. I'm pretty sure we're going to keep him past the first 9 games. This way, we're going to burn a year off his contract, but still, we obviously want him on that lineup. He's an incredible player. He's a huge impact player. Past couple of games, he's been a little bit quieter, but I think that's because teams are now noticing this. The same thing with Hischier, and they're putting some shutdown pairings on them so that they can't score, which then leaves the lower second and third pairings for our third and fourth liners who are now scoring. So we have all 4 lines rolling deep, and we weren't able to do that last year. So just to kind of compare the two teams, last year we didn't have our 5th win until November 6th. It is October 17th this year that we have our 5th win. That's almost 2 weeks to the date earlier that we now have our 5th win. And we also have 26 goals for in these 6 games, whereas last year we had 13 goals for in our first 6 games. So we have double the goals for. 2 weeks earlier, 10 points, 5-1-0, and we have beaten Toronto, the Rangers, and now Tampa Bay. 2 of the top 3 teams, well, Rangers kind of fell off, but Toronto and the Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay has the most points, but I think they have the most games played too, so they're pretty much on the mix for being the best team in the NHL. And the Devils are right there with them. I think because it's a shootout win, we have a little bit less regulation overtime wins, so technically we're in second or third, but in terms of point totals, we're right up there, and I think second place overall in point total percentage. So I don't know where this team is coming from. I really don't. This is year 1 of the rebuild. I can't help but compare us to the Yankees, who are now in the ALCS now, and they were supposed to be in the first year of a rebuild, and they just said, fuck that, we're going to be winning, we're going to be dominant, and this is going to be a great year for us. And I'm starting to get some of those feelings now with the Devils. Is it sustainable, though? That's the thing. I want to kind of pump the brakes a bit and talk about whether this is sustainable. Yeah, we've been winning, but the defense is still a big concern for me and for many people, and I don't know why it's not being talked about a lot. There's a few people I know on Reddit, on YouTube, where 1 or 2 people are bringing it up, but a majority of people are acting like we are winning games 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, and Corey Schneider is standing on his head. Schneider is standing on his head, don't get me wrong. He is having a bounce-back year and then some. But the defense, oh boy, some of those defensive laps. Severson last night against Tampa Bay, I would say 3 of those goals are directly his fault, and I usually don't say things like that. Usually if a player makes a mistake, I'll say, yeah, but other players should have gotten, caught up with him, or the goalie should have saved it. No, 3 of those goals were god-awful mistakes by Severson, letting Stamkos alone, letting Kucherov alone. You don't do those things when you just get a massive contract like he did, and you're supposed to be one of our best, if not the best defenseman we have out there. I think Santini's actually trying to fill in that role now as our best defenseman, and that's exciting because he's a bit more defensively sound. I think he has a bit more stature as a 1D compared to Severson. I think Severson's a nice complement to a top pairing defenseman, but I don't think he's going to be a 1D. Santini, though, has the potential, so I'm excited. He's kind of under the radar right now, but after last night, I think he's coming out of the woodworks a bit more. But that defense is still a major, major question mark. Will Butcher, fantastic, absolutely fantastic. 9 assists in his first 6 games, breaking records. He's definitely a lot more than we expected coming out of the NCAA last year. But he's also getting sheltered minutes. A majority of his time is on the power play. He's essentially like a 4th forward out there more than a defenseman. But then he does that 360 save on a 2-on-1 last night against Tampa Bay. So he could be just getting used to the ice, getting used to playing against NHLers. I need to look at some more tapes of him in the NCAA to see how his defensive game is. But in terms of his offensive game, I could watch that assist he had on Stafford's goal against the Rangers on Saturday over and over and over again. If you don't know, cutting up the ice on the rush, he was the point man on the rush, puts on the brakes, brings two Rangers defensemen towards him on the blue line, wide open pass straight to Stafford, who then went around the D and put it past Pavlik on a backhander, and that was the game-winning goal. That's not something you see from a rookie, especially one who just came from the NCAA, and is this apparently this overrated prospect that we have. That's not something you see from someone like that. He's completely different than we expected in a good way, and he's incredibly happy. He picked the Devils, which actually makes me feel better. I know a lot of times if you get signed or traded, sometimes you're worried that they don't like it. No, he picked us. He picked this team, and he's doing this well, and John Hines is really working with them. And there was an article out a couple days ago where Butcher says, I'm being set up to succeed, or someone was saying Butcher is being set up to succeed. He's not getting crazy minutes. He's being put on the power play more than the penalty kill, because those are his strengths. His passing and his shooting are his strengths. He's not great defensively, but he's great at being a point man on the power play. And so we're really working with him, getting him on those strengths, and down the line I think he'll be a lot more sound defensively, and you'll start to see him get more even strength minutes. You'll see him on the penalty kill a bit more. You could even see him go up to the second and first line pairings if he's that good, because right now he's a third line defenseman, or I'm sorry, third pairing defenseman. Our leading scorer is a third line defenseman. It's such a weird season so far in all the best ways. But that defense does concern me, and as I said, Corey Schneider's bouncing back. He's doing fantastic, but the stats don't show that. He had a sub 900 save percentage last night and 4 goals against. But if you watch the game, you know that Schneider stole the game for us, but the stats don't show that, just because that's how bad the defensive game is right now. And sometimes it tightens up a little bit, but they let in these lapses. We have a very relaxed way of attacking the puck carrier in our own zone right now. I don't know why. The system defensively is a bit weird. It's a little bit differently than it was in the preseason, because in the preseason we had a lot of forechecking, we had a lot of transition game. I was seeing a lot of the forwards going down behind the net, double teaming the puck carrier and harassing them. It almost looks like we're setting up for a penalty kill now in the offensive zone, and I saw a lot of that last night, especially when the Stamkos and Kucherov line was on. They were just sitting back and letting them do what they wanted in the zone, blocking shots, letting Schneider, take a glove save, hoping for a face-off, and that way we can then do our transition game and go in the opposite direction. But in a 60-minute game, that's not something you want to really rely on. That's good maybe for your fourth line out there with the third pair when you don't have a lot of skill on the back end. But for Andy Green to be just so lax in the sense that they're just sitting back and being reactive rather than harassing the puck carrier, it's not a system that's going to really be sustainable down the line. Thankfully, our offense is clicking on all cylinders. Even Taylor Hall hasn't been on the score sheet. Nico Hischier hasn't had his first goal yet, and we're still winning games, 5 goals a game, 6 goals a game. It's been a wild ride, and I'm really excited for the next couple of games. But I don't know if it's sustainable until we fix up that defensive hole. I don't know if it's sustainable unless Taylor Hall starts clicking a bit more, until Nico Hischier gets his first goal. A lot of question marks, which actually makes the games a lot more enjoyable, because a lot of new things can happen. Like every game I'm now waiting for Hischier's first goal. Every game I'm waiting for Butcher's first goal. I'm waiting for the power play to click again, because the power play is top in the league right now at about 30%. I'm waiting for Corey Schneider's first shutout. Like, these are things that can actually happen. These are things that I'm waiting for every single game, and it makes them so much more exciting compared to where we were last year. And really, every game has been like that. It's just been questionable defense, great offense, and outstanding goaltending, and that's really what's kept us in there. And so when you see games that are 6-4, 5-4, 5-3, that's the reason they're high scoring, and they're fun to watch though. Very stressful, but very fun to watch. So I'm hoping they continue this into next year. If not, or not next year, but into the next couple of weeks. If not, it's a rebuilding year. I'm not too worried, but for now I'm enjoying the ride pretty much. So I'll be doing one of these for at least every game, hopefully in between games, trying to get on a more routine. So make sure you guys like and you subscribe down below, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.